Okay, so we're going to make the screw slide block. So what we're going to do, I'm going to start with a sketch on the right plane. Let me zoom in a little bit, make this easier to see. So I'm just going to make the basic shape. So I'm going to start over here and just kind of make an upside down T. And as I go, I'm making sure that I'm putting things 90 degrees to each other, so that way I don't have to go make those perpendicular constraints later. Come over here and then down to there. All right, so now I've got my shape, and I want it to, like if I move one side in, I want these two sides to be tied to each other. I want the height of this to be tied. So I need to put some constraints on here. So the first one I want to do to center, in order to center up the middle of this line, I'm going to constrain the midpoint of this line. I'm going to click that, and I'm going to click the origin. So that's going to put the midpoint of this line directly on the origin. Okay, so now if I move this, the bottom stays centered, but the top doesn't, right? The top still isn't there. See how only one moves? And then these two, I also want both of these shoulders to move together. I want them to have the same height, so I need to constrain those. So let's start with those. So I'm going to pick a collinear constraint. I'm going to make this shoulder and that shoulder collinear. And now they should move together. Yep. Okay, so there's that one. And now I need to do the midpoint of this top line. I'm going to constrain it vertically with that one. So I want the midpoint of this line up here to always be directly above that midpoint right there. So I can do that by picking horizontal, vertical. And to find the midpoint of this line, what you do is you just start on one end of the line, hold the shift key, and move slowly. And when you get to the midpoint, that little symbol will pop up. So that's the midpoint. So I'm going to click that. And then I'm going to click down here to align it vertically. So now this point, the midpoint, will always line up with there. So now if I come over here, yep, that works. So it's got its geometric constraints. So let's go do the measurement, the dimensional constraints. So I'm going to dimension, let's see, this bottom shoulder is, how high? 0.355. And then the whole height between those 2 points is 0.844. And now, let's see, the little shoulder right here, the width of this little shoulder is 0.125. And the width of the entire block, the bottom width, is, let me see, where is this? 0.734. So there is my block totally constrained. Well, the sketch of it, right? So I'm going to finish the sketch. Let's go extrude this. So I'm going to highlight that. I'm going to click extrude. I'm going to move this so we can see this real quick. Let me click home. So this is a little easier to see. So I could, let me zoom out a little bit. I could just extrude this way, right? Which would work, but I want to use the origin to keep my block centered on that so I can drill a hole, right? It's usually just good practice to keep stuff centered on the origin. So, I mean, it's not going to be wrong if you do it this way, but if you want to, right, this is 1.75. I want to make it 1.75, but I want to keep the origin in the middle. Instead of doing the direction one side, you can choose symmetric. And so obviously this is too big because it extruded 1.75 on both sides. But you can change that here if you choose the whole length. So now my whole length is 1.75 symmetric from the middle, right? So 1.75. And everything else is right, so I'm going to click OK. So now I have my, let me zoom out a little bit. There's my rough outline of my block. So now we just got to go add the other features. So there is a chamfer on 8 of these corners. So I'm just going to select all of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then you could either rotate it around using the view cube, or if you go real slow, hidden lines will pop up. So there's one, that's 7. There should be another one down around here somewhere. There it is, 8. And so I can do 0.125, an eighth of an inch. There we go. Okay, so now I just need the hole and the little hex cut out. So for the hole, this is where centering on the origin is going to come in handy. So I'm going to create a sketch for the hole on the top of this plane. So before I make the hole, what I'm going to do, instead of just making a hole randomly, right, using the hole tool, I can create a point, and I'm going to center this point directly over the origin, right there. And that's all I'm doing. That's my sketch. So now there's a point that's lined up directly above the origin, and I can use that when I create my hole. So notice on your hole tool it says select face, plane, or sketch point. So I could just make a hole randomly, or I can choose a sketch point, which is what that is. So I'm going to click on that hole, and my hole note says that it is 0.177 through. So my width is 0.177, it's already like that. And then to do the depth, instead of having to drag this up and down to like guess, if you change your extent to all, it'll make it go all the way through. So now it says all, and it's 0.177 wide. So I'm going to click OK. It is a simple hole, simple, yeah. There we go. So now I have a hole going through. Okay, last thing, let me roll underneath. I need to create the little hex cutout down here. So to do that, I'm going to basically sketch a hexagon and then just extrude it a little bit. So create sketch. I'm going to draw on the bottom plane, and I'm going to choose create a polygon. I'm going to choose an inscribed polygon. The only difference between these two, a circumscribed polygon uses, go back to it, the center point and the midpoint of an edge. I'm going to use an inscribed polygon because it uses the center point and a vertex. And I'll show you what I mean here in a second. So I'm going to click the exact center of this hole, the origin, right? This is, again, why it's helpful to center it on the origin. So I'm going to click there for my midpoint. And now, see how I'm dragging the vertex out for my second point? If I did the other one, it would be using the midpoint. If I dragged up that green line, it would look like this. But now it looks like this. So I'm just going to place it, and then I'll dimension it later. So there's my hexagon. I want the vertex of this to be always lined up with the midpoint. So I'm going to put a constraint, a horizontal constraint, I'm sorry, vertical constraint on that point and the origin. So now those are vertically constrained. And I can go dimension. If I look at my dimensions, it says that this width is 0.386. So I'm going to make it 0.386 wide. And now, see, it's all black, totally constrained. So finish my sketch. Now I can extrude it. So we'll go extrude. I'm going to highlight just that. And this is where, let me scroll this down a little bit so you can see. I want it to go in. It says the hexagon goes to a depth of 0.255. So this is negative. I'm going to make this 0.255. Click OK. And now this should be done. Yeah, looks like it. Let me double check. Chamfer's hole. Yeah, that's it. So we can save this. We'll save it as screw slider block. Press save, and that's it.